Some of the things that I get asked a whole lot about is fresh versus frozen meat. Does it hurt to freeze my meat? Does it hurt to buy frozen meat? No, it doesn't hurt if it's done properly. And you got to know what you're looking for. Frozen meat, let's be real, our grandmas and grandpas have frozen everything forever, from the meat lockers all the way to still today. You don't buy a whole beef and keep it fresh and eat it. So knowing what you're looking for is very important. So as you're looking at the meat while it's sitting in the freezer, you want to make sure it doesn't have a lot of what we call purge. It's looks like blood or juices in the bag. There's a great chance that that stuff has been already aged and it's lost a lot of its juiciness and then frozen. You want a bag that's real tight, no air pockets in it, nothing like that. You don't want to see air crystals in it. Sorry, water crystals in it. So once you get it thawed out, buy a good piece of meat. Let's start with that. Buy a good piece of meat. Make sure it's in good shape. Now, when you thaw it out, start with the most common thing. The first thing that hits you when you cut the bag open, the odor. If it has a stench, a real bad smell, more times than not, it's not going to be good, but not every time. Sometimes it's just the carbon dioxide that's built up in the bag, because that comes out of the meat naturally as it ages. So the rule of thumb that I always do and use is, after taking the meat out, rinse it off, wash it, smell your hands. You know, if it smells like new baby scours, generally it's not going to be any good. Let your nose be the test. But if it's still got a fresh smell and odor, nothing with that, you're fine. Just treat it like a piece of meat that you bought locally at a store. Then you don't have anything to worry about. But your 7 senses within yourself is the most important. Use common sense. Don't buy something out of a freezer that looks like it. You don't want to buy something that's been sitting there a year. It's not brain surgery, just don't overthink it, because not all frozen meat is bad. Best example is, most chicken today has been frozen at grocery stores. It's shipped packaged and it's shipped frozen, regardless of what they say, fresh or frozen. If it's shipped at around 28 degrees, there's a great chance it got frozen. I mean, let's be real, water freezes right before blood. So if it's down at 28 degrees, the water molecules in the meat's going to freeze first. So yes, technically it's fresh because the blood never froze, but it still froze. Get real. That's one real important question that I get asked all the time. Does it hurt to buy frozen meat? No, it don't hurt to buy frozen meat. Just treat it like it, and I would not recommend freezing it a second time or a third time. I'm not a big fan of that either. Fresh over frozen, if done right, I have no problems with it. That's just something you can use when you want to trust your butcher.
What about, how do you know if a product's been, thawed out at the store and then refrozen and they repackage it? I mean, is there telltale signs to knowing that? Because I know not all places are super honest about that, and they got to try to sell that product. Is there any telltale signs or anything for what you would say is frozen goods?
Not really. There's really not. Great question as far as, how can you tell if something's been frozen, thawed out, and refroze? Generally just the color of the meat. You're going to find that all meat will be oxygenated and it's going to lose its bloom, its redness. That's just the natural process of the meat. It's going to get real red and then it's going to go back to a brown. The best example of that is generally hamburger, after it's set for 6 or 7 hours, it's going to get brown in the middle. Contrary to popular opinion that that's old meat in the middle, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that's just due to lack of oxygen, and it's already bloomed and it's went through. You can take 2 pieces of steak and do the same thing, and it's going to be brown in the middle. So not all brown meat means it's old. It's just already went through the process. Now, frozen product, you know, it'll lose more moisture. You'll know more of that, unfortunately, after it's cooked. You're going. A lot of times, it's not going to be frozen properly. So that's the biggest, not a real clue. That's the biggest problem. Is that when it freezes, water crystals will form around the cell structures, and it'll burst that cell, which loses the moisture, and you don't realize it until it's thawed out. Once it's thawed out, then all the purge is going to come out in your bag or your dish. Then it's going to be a drier piece of meat. So a telltale sign, I honestly don't know of one as far as being able to say you can tell by brisket A or brisket B which has been frozen or thawed several times, other than the possibility of a lot of purge in the bag. That's going to be the only way to tell if it's still in the bag.
Okay, so then that purge is what is the smell that we're looking for, is based off of that purge, right?
No, not really. The smell is just age. If it's still in the cryovac, the bag that it come in from the factory, the smell, generally that's a little CO2 is pumped in it for preservation. The smell can be the natural, don't want to sound wrong or morbid, but the decomposition of the meat. Meat is going through decomp from the time the animal dies until the time you cook it. It's breaking down the cell structure, the muscle fibers. That's what the smell is, because it's got trapped carbon in the layers of the meat, and that's what you smell in that bag when you cut it open. It's that excess carbon dioxide that's come from the inside. That's a smell. And then there's a sour smell. That's the difference. That's what we're trying to explain on what you need to find. But the blood and the myoglobin and all that that's in the bag, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. That just means it's, one, either was frozen properly, or two, it is what we call wet aged. It's set in a refrigerator / walk-in cooler for 30-40 days, and it's aged, and it's allowed the decomp to go through the process to break it down so that it is more tender when it is cooked. So you got a fine line right there. You're not sure if you want a little drier. That's the reason we love our injections. Hint, hint. That's why we love our injections, is that you can still get an aged piece of meat, but keep it moist. So that's really the best scenario. It's not the juices. It's not that.